My name is Ethan. I'm 33, and the night I found a secret group chat called Fam Chat, no Ethan. Every illusion I had about my family shattered. They didn't just joke about me. They mocked every meal I cooked, every plan I made, every dollar I spent trying to hold us together. I heard my brother on the patio calling the trip my guilt tour, and the next morning they laughed while confessing they'd made the chat because I was too much. I thought I was giving them memories. They thought I was the joke, but what they didn't know was, before I continue, tell me where you're watching from, and hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by family. I know I'm not the only one who's felt that cold sting from the people who were supposed to love you the most. Your support helps this story reach others who need to hear it. Ready? Let's go. I grew up in a house where silence had weight. Not the peaceful kind, but the thick, heavy kind that settles into the carpets in the corners of the living room like dust no one bothers to clean. Our home in Cedar Falls wasn't chaotic or loud. It was orderly, almost too orderly. The TV was always low, the curtains always half drawn, and my parents spoke to each other like polite co-workers, sharing an office, not a life. The earliest memory I have is of a dinner table lit by a flickering overhead bulb. I was maybe 6. The kitchen smelled like roasted chicken garlic and something warm that made my stomach growl. Mom placed a drumstick on Brooke's plate, then one on Jace's. She skipped me without noticing. Or maybe she did notice. I'll never know. I remember sitting there waiting for my turn while the sound of silverware scraped against ceramic. When I finally asked, "Can I have one too?" She blinked like she had forgotten I existed. She handed me the smallest piece, barely larger than my thumb. I swallowed it. I told myself it didn't matter. But it carved deeper than I thought. Years later, I'd be holding that same feeling without realizing it was the blueprint for everything that came next. I didn't know it back then, but this would matter later. Flash forward to 3rd grade, science fair day. I had built a cardboard volcano with homemade baking soda lava and painted cardboard trees around it. The gym smelled like glue sticks, sweat, and cafeteria tacos. When they announced my project as the winner for the grade level, I remember scanning the crowd for my parents. Dad was taking a picture of Jace who wasn't even participating. He was dribbling a basketball in the corner showing off for 2 classmates. Mom stood nearby with her arms crossed, eyes only drifting toward me when they announced 2nd place. I held the ribbon in my sweaty hands, nodded when my teacher congratulated me and told myself it was fine. But I felt something compress inside my chest, like a hand tightening with each beat of my heart. By the time I was 13, favoritism wasn't subtle anymore. It was woven into everyday life. There was this one Thanksgiving, the house bright, with orange fall decorations, cinnamon candles burning, football humming from the living room. Brooke had just gotten accepted into some magnet arts program. My parents bought her a new camera to celebrate. I had brought home straight A's that same week. Dad nodded when I told him. "That's good," he said, without looking away from the TV. Mom asked if I could help set the table. I didn't know it then, not fully, but this would come back to haunt me. In high school, I worked part-time at a diner. Greasy fryers sizzling behind me, the smell of burnt coffee always hanging in the air, neon sign outside flickering every few seconds. I picked up double shifts to save money for college. Sometimes I sent some of that cash home when things seemed tight. Mom always thanked me. She always said, "You're reliable, Ethan." I didn't know she was using that money to help Brooke buy a dress for prom or to help Jace go on some 3-day basketball camp trip. I found out later. I laughed it off at the time. It's whatever I said. But it sanded me down in ways I wouldn't understand until much later. College was supposed to be my clean slate. I went to Oregon State, studied computer science, lived in a tiny apartment where the ceiling leaked when it rained. Still, it felt like freedom, the smell of rain-soaked carpet ramen boiling on a stove older than me, the metallic hum of the old AC unit. I called home every Sunday. Mom mostly talked about Brooke's internships, Jace's games, Dad's new lawnmower. When I told them I landed my first paid internship at a tech company, Mom said, "That's good, honey," then asked if I could help Jace buy new shoes for his tournament. I hung up staring at the wall, feeling that old compression in my chest again. I didn't know back then, but every small cut had been preparing me for the deepest one. And it wouldn't come until adulthood, long after I moved into my own place in Portland. A small house, quiet neighborhood, faint smell of pine trees after the rain. A life I built from scratch, piece by responsible piece. When I bought it, I sent a picture to the family chat. Brooke replied, "Cute starter home." Jace wrote, "When's the housewarming party? I'll bring beer if you buy snacks," Mom said. "So proud of you." Then asked if I could come home next weekend to fix their Wi-Fi. I swallowed it. Again? But it carved deeper than I realized. By the time I turned 25, I had become the family handyman, chauffeur, IT department, and emotional shock absorber. Every visit home felt like stepping back into a role I didn't audition for but somehow got cast in anyway. I remember one summer afternoon, the kind where the air feels thick and the sun sits heavy in the sky. I pulled into my parents' driveway, the gravel crunching under my tires, carrying a bag of tools because Dad said the sink was leaking. The moment I walked in, Mom handed me a grocery list. Not a hello, not a hug, just a list. "Since you're here, honey," she said. Brooke lounged on the couch, scrolling through Pinterest. Jace played video games with the volume up. I fixed the sink, did the grocery run, and carried 4 heavy bags inside. No one looked up. I swallowed it, pretending it was normal. But it hollowed something out inside me. Christmas that year was colder than usual, not because of the weather, but because of the way the house felt. We were all in the living room, the tree blinking with cheap LED lights, pine-scented candle burning too strong. The kids tore open their gifts while Brooke filmed them on her phone. Jay strutted around wearing the new leather jacket my parents bought him. My gift was a sweater, a thin one, size too small. Tag from a clearance rack still tucked inside the collar. Mom said, "We didn't know what you needed." I forced a smile, forced gratitude, forced myself not to notice the way Jace smirked like he knew the imbalance was obvious. I didn't know it then, but this would become a pattern I could trace like constellations. There was this one night around New Year's when a storm knocked out the power. Wind howled outside. Rain smacked the windows and the living room was lit by a single battery lantern. Brooke complained about being cold. Jace complained about being bored. Dad told me to check the breaker outside, in freezing rain, with no jacket. "Because you're the one who knows these things." I trudged out into the storm teeth, chattering shoes, sinking into mud. I fixed it, came back dripping. No one said thank you. Just Brooke saying, "Good, now we can charge our phones." Another moment I swallowed, another layer of resentment I didn't know I was carrying. When I entered my late 20s, things got busier. My tech job picked up. I started climbing the ladder quietly, steadily. Whenever I visited home, Mom would say, "You work too much?" then ask me to set up her new tablet. Brooke would roll her eyes when I talked about work. "Can't imagine staring at code all day," she'd say. Jace would joke, "At least he's not lonely. He's got his computer." The words were small stabs disguised as humor, but each one cut deeper than I admitted. I didn't know it back then, but these tiny slashes were softening me up for the real blow. One 4th of July stands out in painful clarity. We were gathered in the backyard, fireflies drifting around the grass, the faint smell of barbecue still lingering. Someone had set off cheap fireworks down the block, crackling red sparks, lighting up the night sky. We sat around a picnic table, Mom passing out watermelon slices, Brooke fixing her kids' plates, Jace flirting with some neighbor who dropped by. I had brought a cooler filled with drinks and snacks, the expensive kind, the kind I knew everyone liked. But when Mom complimented the setup, she turned to Brooke. "You always make gatherings so nice." Brooke didn't correct her. I stayed quiet, staring at the condensation dripping down the side of my plastic cup. I swallowed it, but it burned more than I expected. Still, the moment that breaks me, most thinking back, wasn't loud or dramatic. It was a small Thursday morning. I'd driven home again because Dad needed help moving something heavy. Turned out it was just a patio chair. One chair, something he and Jace could have lifted easily. But somehow it became my job. Afterward, we all sat in the kitchen. Morning light filtered through the blinds in narrow stripes, the smell of reheated coffee hanging in the air. Jace laughed about some joke from work. Brooke talked about the kids. Mom cut fruit. Dad sipped coffee. Not one person asked how my life was going, not once. In that moment, something inside me whispered, "They don't see you. They only see what you do for them." I brushed it off. Told myself I was overthinking it. Told myself all families are like this. But deep down, I knew I was lying. I didn't know it then, but this quiet ache, this slow, steady erosion, would shape my future in ways I never expected. And none of it prepared me for the vacation. None of it prepared me for the secret group chat. None of it prepared me for the moment everything finally snapped. The unraveling didn't start with the group chat. It began months before with small cracks I kept pretending weren't there. Looking back, each moment was a warning I refused to hear, a low rumble before the real quake. The first crack came during Christmas the year before the trip. We were all crowded in my parents' living room, lights blinking unevenly on the artificial tree. Dad was poking at the fire like it offended him. Brooke's kids ran in circles, and the whole house smelled like cinnamon rolls and burnt ham. I stood up, cleared my throat, and said, "What if we all did a beach trip next summer, my treat? I'll handle everything." Brooke blinked like I'd spoken in another language. Jace raised an eyebrow. "You serious, Mom?" said. That sweet Ethan with the same tone she used when I brought home handmade Mother's Day cards as a kid, polite, soft, distant. No one said thank you, but no one said no. I mistook silence for acceptance. 2 weeks later, I sent them an itinerary in a Google Drive folder: flight options, rental houses, kid-friendly activities. Brooke didn't open it. Jace reacted with a thumbs-up emoji and disappeared. Mom called me not to say thank you, but to ask if the house had enough pillows because Brooke was picky about that. I brushed it off. But it stung. The second crack came when planning went full swing. I found a gorgeous rental house on the California coast, white shutters, wraparound deck, big kitchen with marble counters. The listing photos looked warm and bright, like a family memory waiting to happen. When I texted it to the chat, Brooke typed, "Does it have a crib?" Jace wrote. "Does it have beer?" No compliments, no excitement. Not even basic acknowledgement of the hours I'd spent searching, just demands. I told myself it was stress that family wasn't supposed to be perfect. But disappointment settled in my stomach like wet sand. The third crack came at the airport. I landed early, grabbed the rental SUV, and circled the arrivals lane until Brooke walked out first, messy bun stroller, 2 diaper bags, her husband trailing behind her like an exhausted shadow. "Oh, thank God you got a big car," she said without hello. "I told you we'd need space." Then Jace came out 20 minutes later with only a backpack and sunglasses on indoors. "Please tell me this place is close to a bar," he said. Mom and Dad were last shuffling slowly, Dad wincing at every step from his hip replacement. I loaded the bags, all of them. Sweat dripping down my neck despite the coastal breeze. No one helped. No one even tried. I told myself it was fine. I was the host. I wanted them to relax. But a tiny ember inside me burned a little hotter. The fourth crack came the first night at the house. I made dinner: grilled fish, roasted vegetables, garlic butter rolls. When I finally sat down, Brooke was already scrolling her phone, her kids playing with the toys I had bought just for them. Mom said, "This is lovely," without looking up. Dad nodded. "Good fish." Jace asked, "Any dessert?" I said softly, "I didn't make any." He smirked. "Damn, you're slipping." I laughed like it didn't matter, but it lodged in my throat. The fifth crack came on day 2. I was spreading beach towels across the sand, blue ones for the kids, striped ones for the adults. A small detail I thought might make things easier. When I stepped back proud for a split second, I heard Jace chuckle behind me. "Dude thinks he's running a resort," he whispered to Brooke. Brooke laughed. "He always does the most." Mom didn't defend me. She said he's trying. Let him. Like I was a child insisting on carrying grocery bags too heavy for me. I stared at the towels, suddenly hating the bright colors. The 6th crack came that night at the patio. The sun had already dipped below the horizon, leaving a purple streak across the sky. Waves rolled in steady calm, indifferent. The adults were drinking wine, the kids asleep. Jace said casually, "Some people think money buys connection." "Huh." Brooke snorted. "Well, it's better than doing nothing." Mom stayed quiet, sipping her wine. My stomach tightened. The breeze felt cold suddenly. I wanted to ask, "Are you talking about me?" Instead, I smiled weakly and said, "What do you mean?" Jay shrugged. "Nothing. Just saying." Brooke didn't even look at me. I felt a bruise forming inside my chest. The 7th crack was the worst until the final break. It happened when Jace asked to borrow my phone because his battery died. I gave it to him without thinking. When he returned it, a bunch of apps were open. One of them was a group chat, fam chat, no Ethan. The name punched the air out of my lungs. My thumb hovered, my heart thudded. A voice inside me said, "Don't do it." Another said they already did. I opened it. The first message I saw was from Brooke. Did you see how he laid out all the towels laughing emoji? Jace bro thinks he's our dad. Brooke. All this just to feel included. Mom. At least he's trying. Dad reacted with a thumbs up. My hands shook. My vision blurred. The ocean outside kept breathing like nothing had happened. And for the first time in years, I felt the full weight of being the outsider. But it wasn't the final break, not yet. That would come soon. Much sooner than I was ready for. I barely slept that night. I lay in the dark guest room, staring at the ceiling while the faint sound of waves pressed against the windows. Every time I blinked, I saw another line from that chat, another joke, another reminder that everything I'd built for this trip, every flight, every meal, every moment, had been twisted into a weapon against me. My chest felt tight, my throat dry, like someone had poured sand down my lungs. But the universe wasn't done yet. The next morning, I went out early to grab coffee for everyone. I memorized the orders like some obedient intern. Mom's decaf, Brooke's caramel oat latte, Jace's double macchiato, Dad's plain black. The cafe smelled like burnt espresso and vanilla syrup loud with milk steamers hissing. I bought pastries too. I don't know why. Habit maybe. Hope maybe. When I returned, I stepped quietly onto the patio, expecting to hear laughter or small talk. Instead, I froze. Jace was pacing by the railing, phone pressed to his ear. His voice was low, annoyed. I swear, dude, I'm losing my mind. He's doing this whole cruise director thing again. I can't take it. My stomach tightened. He paused, then chuckled sharply. No, he paid for everything. Yeah, flights, house food, all of it. Brooke calls it his guilt tour. Pretty accurate. Guilt tour. I stepped back before he saw me, heart thudding like footsteps in my ears. I waited around the side of the house until he finished. When I walked inside through the front door, he took the coffee from my hand without making eye contact. Thanks, he said, already scrolling. No smile, no gratitude, just expectation. At breakfast, Brooke complained about the pastries being too sweet. Mom asked politely if I'd remembered her decaf. Dad adjusted the umbrella angle without acknowledging the fact that I'd set everything up before they came down. A thought crept in, then slow but sharp. They don't see you, not the real you, just the version that works for them. But the breaking point hadn't arrived yet. It would. And when it came, it would be quiet at first, quiet enough to feel surgical. On the fourth morning, I woke early, drove to the store, bought snacks, drinks, and more breakfast ingredients because no one else would. When I returned, arms full of grocery bags, the house was silent. A strange kind of silent, tight, expectant wrong. I pushed the front door open with my shoulder. There they were, Brooke, Jace, Mom, huddled around the kitchen island, eyes stuck on Jace's phone. The moment they saw me, they jolted like kids caught stealing. Brooke's face drained. Mom's lips parted. Jace didn't look guilty. He smirked. Morning, he said, leaning back like he'd rehearsed it. You ever think about how weird it is that you're the only one not in the group chat? My heartbeat thudded in my ears. What group chat? I asked, even though I already knew. Jace shrugged. Relax. It's just the one we moved everything to. You were getting intense. Intense, I repeated quietly. Brooke cleared her throat. The spreadsheets, the plans, you were just trying too hard. It was overwhelming. Mom stepped in gently. We didn't mean anything by it, honey. People just need space. Space. That word sliced me clean. I set the grocery bags down slowly. So, you made a chat without me, I asked. Jace snorted. Don't take it personally, man. You can be a lot. A lot. Like loving too much was a crime, like effort was embarrassing. Then he said at the final merciless punch. You don't have to keep buying our love, bro. We're family. Just chill. Something inside me cracked, quietly, neatly. like a thin piece of glass snapping between careful fingers. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I didn't ask for explanations that would only cut deeper. Instead, I walked to the table, unlocked my phone, and booked the earliest flight home. My fingers were steady. My breath wasn't. Then, I pulled up every reservation tied to my credit card, rental cars, dinner bookings, excursions, theme park tickets Brooke had been excited about. I canceled them one by one, watching the confirmations roll in like falling dominoes. I didn't make eye contact, not yet. I grabbed a sticky note from the drawer, wrote one simple sentence in black Sharpie. Didn't realize generosity was something to laugh at. Enjoy the bill. I stuck it dead center on the fridge. No flourish, no dramatics. Then I picked up my backpack, walked out the door, and called an Uber. It was still early morning. Mist clung to the air, cool and salty. As I rode to the airport, my pulse slowly steadied. A strange stillness settled over me, a numb kind of clarity. They wanted space. I gave it to them. When I landed back home hours later, my house felt too quiet, too clean, too empty. I closed the door, leaned against it, and broke. My knees hit the floor before I realized I'd fallen. I buried my face in my hands and sobbed harsh and loud like grief ripping from a place I didn't know existed. Every apology I never got. Every thank you I never heard. Every joke I pretended not to understand. I cried for all of it. And when the tears finally stopped, I swore something slenderly. In the dimness of my living room, surrounded by nothing but my own breath, this was the last time they would get to break me. The last, but I didn't know then, not yet, that the fallout was coming. Bigger, sharper, crueler, and it would push me towards something I never expected: revenge. But not the kind they imagined. The night of the dinner felt unreal, like stepping into a stage play where I finally knew my lines. I arrived early to the small Italian restaurant, tucked between a florist and a closed bookstore, its windows glowing with warm amber light. Inside, the air smelled like simmering tomatoes, garlic, and baked bread. Soft jazz hummed in the background, the kind that makes every conversation feel heavier. I chose a round table in the back, far from the windows where shadows clung to the walls like secrets. I sat there with a folder in my lap, blue plain, almost boring. No one would have guessed what was inside, could split a family down the middle. They arrived together like a scene they had practiced. Brooke in a pale green blouse, hair curled too neatly. Jace in a bomber jacket, sunglasses on his head even though it was dark. Mom and Dad trailing behind their smiles, stretched thin, the kind that never reaches the eyes. "Hey," Brooke said softly, like talking to a wounded animal. I nodded. No smile. Not tonight. We ordered water. Bread was placed on the table. They tried small talk, light, brittle things that cracked as soon as they were spoken. "How's work?" Dad asked. "Fine. You look better," Mom offered. I didn't answer. The waiter returned, took our orders, refilled our water glasses. The moment he stepped away, I reached into my bag. "We need to talk," I said. Brooke tensed. Jace leaned back. Mom's hand curled slightly on the tablecloth. I placed the blue folder in the center of the table. No one touched it. "What's that?" Jace asked, though he already knew. "Reality," I said. My voice was calm. Too calm. I opened it. The first page slid out a screenshot of the chat title. "Fam chat, no Ethan." The silence that followed was dense, suffocating. Brooke's breath caught. Jace's jaw twitched. Mom whispered, "Oh God." I slid out the next page, lines of messages printed in clean black ink. Brooke. "Did you see how he laid out all the towels? Jace dude thinks he's our dad." Mom. "At least he's trying." Dad's thumbs up reaction beneath it. I watched their faces as the words stared back at them. "I found the chat," I said. "All of it." Brooke shook her head quickly. "Ethan, it wasn't." "It was," I said. "Don't rewrite it now." Jace scoffed, but his eyes flickered with something uneasy. "We were joking, man. You're taking this way too seriously, so it's funny." I asked, sliding another page forward. Jace's call transcript I wrote down. "He thinks this is his guilt tour. Brooke calls it that too." Brooke's lips trembled. "That was taken out of context." "There's context," I asked. "I paid for everything. I planned everything. I tried. And you called it guilt." Mom reached across the table, her voice soft. "Honey, we didn't mean to hurt you. People say things they don't mean when they're stressed." I looked at her hand but didn't touch it. You said I was overwhelming, I said. You said I was intense. You made a separate chat because I tried too hard to make us feel like a family. You wanted space, fine. But you didn't have to turn me into a joke. Dad leaned back, exhaling slowly. You're blowing this out of proportion. There it was. The sentence that explained my entire childhood. I pulled out the final page, a printed list of every cost from the trip, each line highlighted. Total at the bottom in bold $5, $842.71. Brooke's eyes widened. Jace looked away. I'm not asking for the money, I said. I'm not asking for an apology. I'm asking for acknowledgement. I'm asking you to see the impact, not hide behind your intentions. Brooke whispered, Ethan, please. But her voice broke off. Jace leaned forward, irritation creeping in. Dude, you're acting like we killed your dog. It was a chat. I stared at him, my voice cold. It was the truth. The waiter arrived with steaming plates, awkward and oblivious. He placed pasta bowls in front of us, the scent of basil rising between the tension. No one touched their food. I closed the folder, slid it back into my bag, and stood. Enjoy dinner, I said. Brooke reached out. Ethan, don't go. But I was already pulling a prepaid gift card from my jacket pocket. I placed it on the table, the plastic tapping against the wood. That covers the bill, I said, so no one has to worry about me buying love tonight. Mom flinched. Jace blinked hard. Brooke's eyes filled with silent tears that came too late. I pushed my chair in slowly, deliberately. The room felt too bright, too warm. The jazz suddenly sounded sharp, like a knife dragging across glass. As I turned to leave, I caught my reflection in the window, shoulders squared, eyes steady. A version of myself I'd never seen before, stronger, colder, clearer. At the door, I looked back one last time. They were frozen in place, staring at the pile of papers like it was a live bomb. I didn't smile, but something inside me shifted, something clean and final. The part of me that had spent 30 years begging to be seen finally went quiet. And in its place came something new, not anger, not grief, precision. A cold, focused clarity that whispered one thing. They wanted space. Now they would have it, all of it. I thought walking out of that restaurant would be the end, a clean tear in a fraying rope. But families like mine don't collapse quietly. They scramble, they claw. They panic when the person they underestimated finally steps out of reach. The next morning, my phone lit up with missed calls. 7 from Brooke, 3 from Jace, 1 long voicemail from Mom asking why I chose humiliation over healing. I didn't respond. Silence was the only language they'd never learned to interpret. 2 days later, Jace showed up at my house uninvited, leaning on his car like he owned the driveway. He tried to talk his way back into innocence, said things like, you know how we joke, and don't be dramatic. Then, when none of it worked, he finally revealed why he was really there. He needed money. Of course he did. A new podcast, set up new equipment, just enough to get things rolling. He said it casually, like we hadn't just ripped open years of wounds. I told him no, calmly, without anger. The shock on his face told me he'd never imagined a world where I stopped saying yes. That's when I knew the shift was real. Then came Brooke's move. A package on my doorstep, no return address, but her handwriting unmistakable. Inside was an old photo of us at the lake, sunburned, grinning a moment from a childhood I once pretended was perfect. On the back, she wrote 5 words. You deserved better than us. I stared at it for a long time, unsure whether to laugh or break. It wasn't an apology. It was an admission wrapped in nostalgia, a bandage placed over a wound she didn't know how to clean. I didn't call her. Not because I hated her, because I finally understood that distance was the only thing that kept me whole. And while they scrambled to rewrite the narrative, I focused on something else, something bigger. The startup Mateo and I had been building quietly in the background. The mentorship program gaining traction. A life forming without their fingerprints on it. They thought they had broken me. They didn't realize they had just handed me the one weapon I needed. Control. True, quiet, unshakable control. And I wasn't done using it. If you're still here, then maybe you know what it feels like to be the outsider in your own family, the one who tries, the one who shows up. the one they take for granted until the moment you finally walk away. And if any part of my story hit you in the chest even a little, then stay with me. There's more to tell, more to rebuild, more to reclaim. This wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning of finally choosing myself. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, subscribe. This story isn't over.